Howdy, listeners. This is Abir Sikder, the Local Global Leaders podcast. For this episode, titled Never Ask Permission to Lead, I spoke with Noel Osborn, who serves as the Director of Development for CivicLex and as co-director for New Leaders Council Kentucky. We discussed the importance of civic health, embracing vulnerability, and celebrating diversity. It was really great to hear about Noel's local work that has inspired so many people across our Commonwealth and even across our nation to really improve their communities. It was also great to chit-chat about our shared admiration for Tina Fey and Princess Leia as well. But I had a great time talking with Noel. She's been a great friend and a really meaningful mentor to me who has helped me and so many others in her leadership journey. Hope you enjoy listening. Greetings, listeners. This is Abir Sikder from the Local Global Leaders podcast. I'm here in the studio today with my great friend and mentor, Noel Osborn, for the latest episode of our podcast. Noel, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored you called me a mentor.
Oh, of course.
That's the first time I think you've referred to me as that, and I'm flattered and honored.
Oh, I know. I mean, you've been we know each other for like 2 years or so, I guess maybe longer than that, but I feel like you've mentored me through a lot of things, especially with leadership, so I just really appreciate that. But definitely, yeah, you're a mentor. Someone I look up to a lot.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
But yeah, and that's why, of course, not the only reason, but one of the, I'll say the main personal reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, so I really appreciate that. But my first question, I just want our listeners to know, I want to know who Noel Osborn is and how you became a leader. So what do you want listeners to know about you off the bat?
Off the bat, I am a proud Kentuckian who is passionate about many things. Some of those things are significant. Some of those things are insignificant. And at the core of my leadership work, I work to help people better engage with the decisions that affect their lives. And essentially, I'm working to make sure they have the skills and the resources they need to do so. Personally, I advocate for strengthening democracy. I advocate for the Galactic Rebel Alliance, and most recently I campaigned pretty hard for Beyonce's Album of the Year win at the Grammys.
Wow, that's you're a true local global leader all over the place with the leadership work you do. That's awesome. And great job on that campaign for Beyonce. Obviously, she won. So
yeah, we worked hard.
Congrats on that. What motivates you to be a leader in your community here in Lexington and in Kentucky overall?
I think, for me, I think leadership is just something that's is natural, ingrained in me. I'm an oldest daughter, so I think it's just always been there. But I love my community. I love the state. I love my community. And I just see so many opportunities for myself and for so many people in our community to just get engaged. It's not that hard. And, we have so many issues locally, statewide, nationally, and in our world. And so I just want to lead by example. I just want to get involved and show people that it's easy to plug in. I mean, it's not always easy, and as far as like the weight that comes with that, sometimes things are hard in what you're trying to advocate for or push against or whatever. But yeah, I think for me, it's just about getting in there and helping people, working together, getting it done. Yeah. That's
awesome. And I know, with your day job, you work at a really great organization, CivicLex. I'm personally a huge fan of CivicLex, and I know WKY, people here are a huge fan of it. Can you tell us about CivicLex and describe your role there?
Sure thing. So CivicLex, we are, I think we're 7 years old, almost 8 years old at this point. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit that works to strengthen civic health in our community. And when we talk about civic health, we're talking about how our community is best equipped to address its biggest challenges. And so we're looking at things like how are people engaging with their local government? Are they voting? Do they know their neighbors? And all of the work that we do, it's pretty broad. And there's not another organization that does exactly what we do in the country. But a lot of it is just helping people get the skills and the resources they need to plug in.
That's cool. Yeah. And when you say can you tell us more? You said there's not another organization like you. What makes CivicLex a bit more, I guess, unique compared to other local civic organizations?
Mm-hmm. Well, we focus on our community only. So that's the first unique label there. But a lot of people know us by our newsletter, the CivicLex Weekly. That's kind of like the crown jewel of our work. It was the first quote-unquote program that we had. So there's plenty of other organizations that cover local government, local civics work in a newsletter or in an online publication. But when you couple that with all of our other programs, the workshops that we do, the events that we hold, and the way that we work, like our intention and our mission, there's literally no one else that houses all of those things in the country. Like, it's just us that's doing that. And we actually receive quite a few outside organizations from across the country that reach out to us. I don't remember what the number is, but it's, a small handful each month that will reach out and ask us to give them some advice because they want to expand or they want to build something like us in their community. So it's really flattering, but we think it's great because, it's kind of, I think what we're doing is the secret sauce to helping people feel better connected to their local government or to their community, and it can be replicated everywhere. It just might need to look a little different in each community. So
it's sort of like, it sounds like you guys might have a model that has a lot of best practices that can be adapted to other places, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we definitely are very upfront about especially our friends over in Louisville. They are constantly. There's various groups, there's various people that I personally interact with who are like, we want this here. Like, could we ever do this? And it's going to be whatever Louisville would create might look different than what we have here at CivicLex because their community is different. So it's all place-based, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So we just want to help people. We give people insight into what we did and give them some guidance, but at the end of the day, it's going to be up to that community to do what's best for them and know their relationships and know what their community needs. So it might look a little different depending on where it is.
Can you tell us more about your specific role at CivicLex?
Sure thing. So I am the director of development. So I do fundraising. I just ask people for money all the time. No, it's more than that. I'm building relationships and it's an amazing opportunity for me to not only build relationships, but get to know the people in our community better and understand what motivates them and understand what they're trying to do and what they care about and seeing how we can work together to support the work that CivicLex is doing and also just make Lexington a better place to live.
Yeah. That's awesome. And it's cool. Yeah, you said you're the first, you're young organization, you're the first director of development. What kind of pushed you into that fundraising role?
Well, I had never done fundraising before, formally, officially. I've been in the nonprofit space before. Actually, all of my positions in my career have been centered on relationship building. That is the common theme. I've been in several different spaces and worked for different types of organizations, but at the core, that is what's consistent. And more recently, I've been in the nonprofit space, and I actually did New Leaders Council back in 2022. And as a fellow there, one of the skills that they work on is fundraising. And again, I had never done that. So when we did our fundraising challenge and I was just calling up friends and family, asking them to support the New Leaders Council mission, I found it to be really fun, really satisfying. And I think I surprised myself at my ability to do it with ease. So after that, I was like, I think that this is something that I want to try professionally and just expand my skill set. And so not that long after doing the New Leaders Council fellowship, I made a job move and joined CivicLex, and now I'm doing it full time. So New Leaders Council kind of changed my life. I always say that.
That's awesome. It's cool that you discovered that while being in that program. It sounds like you found the fun in fundraising right away.
Oh man, I love a good pun.
Yeah, but that's really cool. Do you have with fundraising? Do you have advice for people, especially people who may I'll say I'm someone openly with anxiety who just may feel nervous asking someone to I don't know, create a financial partnership or is asking them for money, whether it's a major organization or asking your parents or asking a friend. I don't know, this could be different scenarios, but do you have advice for people who feel uncomfortable or anxious or nervous about that?
Yeah, I mean, those, like you said, those are different situations. Yeah. So when it's friends and family, it's easy because they care about you. They are, if you're passionate about what you're asking for them to support, all you have to do is ask, really. They're the easy ones. The worst thing that they're going to say is no. And I think just accepting that and working through that, eliminates that fear. when we're talking about people outside of our close friends and family and maybe community partners or whatnot, it's really all in building those relationships. I think it's so important, not only in fundraising, but also just in any partnership, to genuinely show up and care about that person. So like in fundraising, I want to get to know them as a person. And like I mentioned before, I want to know what motivates them, what they care about. And so once you understand that and you can identify that they do care about the work that you're doing and specifically what you're doing, like a specific program or whatnot, it's all a matter of just like sharing that information, making sure that they do feel passionate and engaged about that, and then just making the ask. And then at that point, you're going back to the similar situation with your family and friends. They're already bought in. You just have to make the ask. And so it just comes with practice. It gets easier and easier. You know, it builds confidence in you. So it seems kind of like not great advice because it's just like doing it really is what I'm saying. But I think we got to build the relationship first.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it actually is really good advice. I appreciate how you mentioned there's a balance of like, of course, showing someone, hey, I'm asking you to donate to this cause because it's important to me. But then more with like big funders, saying that, but saying, I think it's also important to you or aligned with your values or your interests too, right?
Yeah. And they have to trust you. And I think that being genuine it goes a long way.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. And it really ties in well to relationship building too, because like you said, with family and friends, those are people you have relationships with, and then you build off that to form new relationships more in a professional sphere or like, talking with an organization or a corporation. You build that relationship first sometimes, and then, you do the ask for the fundraising, or you use the fundraising to build that relationship sometimes, right? Yep. So can you tell us more about your work with New Leaders Council?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I completed the fellowship in 2022, immediately joined the board afterward as the recruitment chair. I've been a recruitment chair for a variety of organizations. I love it. Again, going back to me being passionate, I just, if I'm passionate about something, I just want to tell everybody and get them involved. And then after a year of doing that, it was time for new co-directors to step in. And I love the model that we have at New Leaders Council of having two main leaders. I mean, everybody on the board is a volunteer. And being a co-director is definitely a part-time job. And having that additional support person goes a long way. But anyway, so very quickly stepped into that role. I think I was going to wait another year or two on the board in the recruitment position, but we needed somebody to step up, so I did, and I absolutely love it. It's been a phenomenal experience, not only building relationships and community within New Leaders Council Kentucky, but also just exercising my leadership. I've learned so many new lessons because it is such a unique organization, and the leadership that is required in this role is a little bit different than some of the other positions that I've had. So I've learned so much.
That's cool. And I'm great. NLC, I know you had the Kentucky chapter. There's also chapters across the country. Are you able to I guess, get that experience of working with people like all over the country in chapters and lead with them and learn from them too? Yes,
we National New Leaders Council is phenomenal. I mean, I've worked with several other national organizations in a variety of industries and whatnot throughout my career, and I am so impressed with National New Leaders Council because they genuinely care, and if we give them feedback, they very quickly respond and pivot. They're not afraid to try new things and trust the local leaders of these chapters across the country. They trust that those leaders know what that chapter needs. I mean, place-based change is a core element to the New Leaders model. But yeah, they've been fantastic. So we do monthly calls, and I've been able to engage with some other leaders across the country in those calls and whatnot. I unfortunately haven't been able to go to convention yet, but I plan to in the future. But the National New Leaders Network is phenomenal. And we are constantly having those meetings and are able to talk about what we're struggling with or give advice, give tips, talk about some of our successes. Abir, actually, you and Dexter created the Civic Suppers event, which is award-winning, nationally recognized. And so that was an idea that you and Dexter had that was brand new. And we ran with it, and nationals loved it, and we were able to actually share that out with some of the other chapters to hopefully inspire them to do very similar events in other parts of the country.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I appreciate shouting out that event. I'm really proud of it and appreciate your and all of NLC's support with that event. And it's cool that you mentioned that, like you said, how we created something that like Nationals was inspired by, maybe other chapters was inspired by, similar to your work with CivicLex, how other organizations are calling you all. Like, it's cool that the things you're leading, like, they're here in Kentucky, but also people across the country, like, want to learn from you and want to, like, gain that experience and, like, just replicate or model that as well. So it's cool that those themes tie together in both those roles.
Yeah, I never really realized that, so that's interesting.
But yes, it's because of the great leadership work you do, of course. What you talked a little bit about this already, but I want to know sort of what prior leadership experience led you to your roles, both with, I guess what you talked about with CivicLex, but with New Leaders Council. I guess with both still, you can feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have anything new to add to that. I just, with my career, the CivicLex work, my full-time work, I loved the job that I had before coming to CivicLex, but I definitely felt like I had plateaued. Like I had maxed out all of the experiences that I could have in that role or at that organization, and it was important. I was like, well, I can't just stay stagnant. I have to keep growing. I have to, I love this job. It's really easy at this point, and I've maxed out all of my opportunities. And so I just felt like I have to challenge myself. And so what better way to do that than to start a position or step into a role that you've never done before and see how it goes.
Yeah.
So it was a risk. I mean, I, of course, love the work of CivicLex, and definitely that appealed to me getting back into the civic space. I had stepped out of that for a little bit, civics/politics. So stepping back into this work was just the cherry on top of everything.
Yeah. I think what you say there, I mean, it's definitely something I can relate to. And yeah, you get to a position and it's like, well, I'm content, I'm happy, but like you want more of a challenge, you have that ambition. I think that, that's oftentimes a sign of a strong leader, someone who says, well, I've done what I can here. I want something like, you're saying that, like, no, someone doesn't have to tell, like, you figured that out yourself, right? That like, I want something new. I need something new.
Yeah.
So.
And I think I want to add to that just, the other side of that is, the programs that I was running at that organization, the one prior to CivicLex, it's beneficial also to the organization to have somebody new come in and take on those programs and have a new outlook on them, because I felt like I didn't have any new ideas. Like I ran out of new ideas for my program. So it was going to be good for them as well to have somebody come in and have some new innovation on that. So it works both ways.
Yeah. I think that's you want to kind of embrace, like, times change. Like, you're right. It's ready for new, fresh voices sometimes. It reminds me, I don't know if you're a Parks and Recreation fan, but the episode where Leslie Knope comes back to the Parks and Rec office and she's like, her mentor Ron's like, you've done all you can here, like, go do something else, because she wants to come back to her job. But I mean, it makes me think of that, and that was a really meaningful moment in that show. But
yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah. Yep. With that, what are the biggest struggles you've encountered in your leadership journey?
I mean, I don't know how to. Struggle is an interesting word because we all struggle with different things. But I think for me, every single hurdle, I think it's more of a hurdle because you have to overcome it, right, is a lesson. And that's not going to stop. That's constant. We always have to keep learning. There's always going to be challenges. And so I can't think of like a specific time or a specific example, but they are constant. We are constantly trying to overcome various challenges, especially like with New Leaders Council, when we're running our institute program, the actual fellowship program. There's a lot of logistical planning that goes into that. So there's just challenges with that. So there's, these little examples I could probably give, but I think it's just looking at things as lessons. So, last year was our first year running Institute, Nicole and I as co-directors. And so we were able to, as we were moving through the program, little challenges or struggles would happen. And so now going into our second year, we learned, and now we know how to make them better this year or just avoid them altogether.
Yeah. And can you tell us, I know it's a really great program I've gone through myself, tell our listeners more about the Institute at New Leaders Council?
Yeah, so that's the signature program of New Leaders Council, and it is a 6-month-long fellowship, January through June. We meet one weekend a month, and our classes are about 14 to 20 fellows. It just varies each year based on the class that we build. We're really intentional with who we accept and the classes that we build and the voices that we're bringing to the table. We really think about the kind of conversations that are going to be had going through the program. But as fellows move through the program, we each month we're highlighting a different area or skill set for them to work on. So one weekend might be focused on policy, the next fundraising, after that marketing/communications, how we market ourselves. And throughout the program, fellows are working on a capstone project, an individual capstone project. And so the idea is whatever their passion is, they can create whatever project they want to do. Some people have done getting recycling at an apartment complex, all the way up to adopting a child, running for office. Abir, you had a great project of, I believe it was having more educators engaged in the political process by running for office. Correct me if,
yes,
yeah, okay, which was fantastic. And so as fellows move through the Institute program, whatever their project is, they're working on their skills and building their network and leaning on their classmates to help support them in that project planning process.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's cool that the Institute, and the fellowship, it gives you a lot of different key skill sets across different events, but also and then ties it all together with that one capstone is pretty unique to each individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of up to them, whatever they want to work on, whether it's more personal, professional, or something in between, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you care to share what was your capstone?
Well, this is kind of a cop out. I hate to say this, but I'm not. It's fine. So I had done another leadership program back in 2018/19, and out of that program, it's Leadership Lexington. I'm not gonna shy away from what it is. Fantastic program, highly recommend it. I did that program, and that program has a much bigger class, and you have group projects within that. And so our group project was the Lexington Diversity Festival, which is still happening now. And at the time of when I went through New Leaders Council, we were trying to bounce back from our COVID break of that festival. And so I was just planning that festival in 22 and also going through the program. I really didn't have a lot of time to create something new. I really tried. I tried to think. I had a variety of ideas for a capstone in New Leaders Council, but I decided the skills that I was learning in New Leaders Council I could take that to planning the Diversity Festival and making that stronger. So at the time, I feel like it felt like a cop-out. It felt like I was cheating because it was a project I was already doing. That was a group project. But at the end of the day, it all worked out because I still took those skills that I learned, especially that fundraising that I talked about earlier, and helped strengthen the Diversity Festival that year and beyond. We're still doing it. So
yeah, it's good. I mean, it's amazing that through these leadership programs, you created something that still has a legacy still going on. And that's an amazing event, I should say, personally.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the most fun. We joked at the time going through the class that we were just throwing a party. I mean, it's a really important party. We're celebrating our community's diversity. Lexington, I forgot the stat now. I think it's actually gone up, but Lexington has over, I think at the time it was 120 dialects spoken in our public school system. And so we have so much diversity here, and we just wanted to have an event that would be an opportunity for us to educate people, celebrate people, and embrace people, and all are welcome. And over the years, it's just grown and become stronger, and we're really proud of it.
That's awesome. And yeah, you said 120 dialects spoken?
That's an old number. I do feel like it's increased, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's a significant number.
Yeah. It matches the number of counties in Kentucky, 120. It's a dialect per county. Wow. That's awesome. I'm really excited to ask you this question because, again, you're someone who's a mentor to me, who's given me a lot of advice for leadership. So I want our listeners to hear this too. But what would you say? What is your overall leadership style or philosophy?
There's so many things. I think overall, I want to be the kind of leader who trusts the team, trust people to do. They are the experts. Trust that you've built the right team. Let them do their thing. Support them and let them run. Don't micromanage. Support them when they need you. Make sure they feel heard. I think that's kind of like the core of my leadership style. More specifically, I think it's important to me to be transparent and really, I'm direct. I have a direct personality, but that's so far worked out well for me. I would say just let people do what they need to do, support them, be transparent, and make it clear, be direct.
Yeah, and it sounds like so a part of that probably is you like to empower people, like to trust your team to empower them. Not you yourself don't have to do everything, right?
Right. Yeah, we're all working as a team, and I also think that another big thing for me is, and where I put a lot of respect in my leaders and my leadership, or the people who are leading me, is I would never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Like that goes so far for people, and is so important to me. I've had a boss who, the plumbing isn't working, and she was trying to fix it, before calling the plumber. She was willing to get her hands dirty, literally, and try to fix things. I think that just meant so much to me, and I just respect leaders who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty and who are down in there with their team trying to do the work and would never ask somebody to do something that they themselves wouldn't do.
Yeah. I think I admire that a lot. That's something that you think about, how it shows that transparency and trust between you and someone else. Mm-hmm. It's funny that you mentioned that example. My minister told a very similar story about how he's like, hey, I'm here to lead whatever you want. Like he's even had to do the plumbing himself at our church. So
plumbing.
It's funny that when you mentioned that exact example, I was like, oh, hey, I've heard a similar thing. So
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's always that if you're going to be a leader, you got to be willing to do some plumbing.
yeah.
Have your wrench ready.
You heard it here, folks. That's where it starts. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And it's do you feel like, so it sounds like you have a pretty consistent leadership style, or do you adapt it toward different roles like CivicLex and New Leaders Council, or is it a pretty standard, consistent style?
I mean, I'm pretty consistent personally. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I'm pretty consistent, and I think that if my leadership style, actually I do know that this is right, if my leadership style wasn't a good fit for a team, then it's just not a good fit, and that's okay. Because I don't think that there's one size that fits all. So you have to, the team and the leader, I'm using these terms very loosely, have to recognize what's going to work collectively. And I think, if leaders are able to adapt, that's important. You have to be flexible, but at the same time, there's going to be, the things that I just mentioned that are core to my leadership style, I can't really change. So outside of that, I'm willing to be flexible, but I also feel like I can know when a team or an organization or a situation doesn't need my leadership or wouldn't be a good fit.
Yeah, that's cool. So it sounds like you have those sort of first principles you take everywhere you go. But then things outside of that, you can adapt and be flexible,
right.
But you stick to that core philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's cool. And then sort of a leadership, I guess you want the leadership philosophy triangle I've developed. I like to think of as my 3 M's, but I see leadership as three major components of being an effective motivator, being a competent manager, and then being a supportive mentor. So how do you see these 3 roles? Do you see them all as kind of very separate roles, or are they all naturally tied together? Or how do you see those 3 M's?
I think all of that's a great philosophy or a great take on leadership in general. And I think that a good leader has all of those, or has the ability to do all of those. I think with the mentorship piece, people have to be willing to accept your mentorship. I don't think you should ever force that on somebody. I think 100% it needs to come from the mentee coming to you and saying that this is the kind of relationship that I want to learn from you. So you have to recognize that too. Like if people don't want to be coached, they're not. They won't be coached. So you shouldn't force that on them. And there might be some deeper stuff you might need to get into with that. But I think a good leader has all of those things for sure, collectively.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'll say again, personally, I appreciate what a mentor you've been to me. And with that example, yeah, I think when I needed advice on some of the things I was doing for work or outside of work, like reaching out to you and being like, hey, I think I was like, hey, I want you to kind of mentor me. And, I appreciate you responding to that. So.
Of course. Yeah. And we have to support each other too. I mean, Abir is a great leader. And I think it's support, there'll be situations where I might call on you and be like, I know you've had this experience. So, and I haven't, and I don't know what to do. What should I do? So it's just leaning on each other as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I always appreciate I'm able to reach out to you for leadership advice and apparently now for plumbing potentially too. So
I gotta study up.
What advice do you have for people, particularly young people who want to be engaged in leadership, particularly people who want to, get more engaged with local and civic engagement? I think this is a great question for this month because it's actually Youth Leadership Month. So,
well, I want to say something that isn't directly tied to civics or leadership, but I do feel like millennials, Gen Z, and younger, my friend and I were talking about this recently, but I feel like, and I'm a millennial, I'll just say it, there's this whole thing of imposter syndrome that people keep talking about, and I don't get it because it's a waste of time. Like, it's okay to feel, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel, but we've got stuff to do. We've got to move on from that. Like, we need to lift people up and make sure they have confidence, and people need to know, people who are feeling imposter syndrome, I mean, if you earned where you are, like, I just don't believe in luck or I believe in hard work, and if you've earned something and you are sitting in that chair, in that position, like, you deserve to be there. And you need to accept that. And I get it's like a natural feeling to kind of second guess every now and then, but you need to suffocate that voice and push on. And I just see more and more young people having imposter syndrome, and it's concerning because we just don't have time for that right now. I think that we need to work on building younger people up to feel more confident. When it comes to civic engagement and leadership, I think the advice I would give, actually, to quote Vice President Kamala Harris, never ask permission to lead. I think that's something that I learned at a younger age. Like, if something needs to get done, just do it. Just jump in and do it. Don't wait for somebody to tell you, yeah, you should lead this. Just do it. And so it was refreshing when I heard her say that when I was a little bit older. So I think that's what I would tell young people. Just roll your sleeves up and get in there. And then the final thing, definitely, we just talked about mentorship. I think that is key. If you are trying to get in someplace or build a skill set that you need to get to a position that you want or to accomplish something, start building relationships and get the advice from the experts directly. Yeah, those are my three pieces of advice.
A lot of great advice. I appreciate you answering those questions about your leadership journey and your personal experiences. Now I kind of want to ask some questions about sort of the local global context of your leadership. But I appreciate before the podcast you called these my fun questions. So I'm going to start using that. These are my local global context / fun questions. But first, what are leadership lessons you've learned from different resources? What I call global sources, but anything from books or movies or TV or podcasts even.
I read a lot of nonfiction books. I love biographies. I love learning from the experience of other people, good or bad people. I just love learning from books. The first leadership lesson that I learned from a book was Tina Fey's Bossy Pants when I was in college. And the thing that stuck with me, she has this section where she was talking about how she was the boss, I think, at SNL at the time, when she got overwhelmed and just started crying, and she didn't hide it from her team because she knew it would make them afraid. It would freak people out. And so her message was, let them see you cry. And I think it's important for a leader to not show too much of like stress. Like if a leader is stressed out, I think that it makes the team stressed out. So you have to kind of mitigate that a little bit. But I think what I took from her saying that, honestly, was a level of transparency that I think it's okay to, as the leader, to let your team know that something is difficult. And just being open about that and transparent. But it's a fine line between that and also making sure that the team knows that you've got them and you're going to lead, and it's okay if they, need to take a beat. And so I think that the point that Tina is making is, let people see that you're vulnerable, and it might freak them out because that's not common for the leader to cry. But for me, my big takeaway was that it is showing a level of transparency. You're a human being and you have these feelings and you're being transparent about that. But on the flip side, I do think it's important there's a fine line of making sure that the team knows that you're in control and that you're going to lead them, and that everything's going to, quote unquote, be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, first I'll say, huge fan of Tina Fey. Bossy Pants is such a good book. I actually listened to the audiobook that she narrates. She does all the voices. It's a great audiobook if anyone, or a great book to read if anyone hasn't read that. But yeah, I appreciate it's I think that's something unique I've heard from you, is that I think often as leaders we're taught to not show that emotion, to be more stoic. I think there can be value in that, but you're sort of saying it's okay to be transparent about to show your vulnerability, to even show your emotions, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on a certain level. For sure. Yeah.
But and to tell, there's a difference between I think that line becomes whenever, okay, if you're a leader struggling with something, to bring your team down or to blame them, versus to say, hey, I'm honestly struggling, but I'm here for you and I still want to work on this as a team. It's kind of that line, right? To be honest, but of course, there's a strength in that, I guess, too.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I really appreciate you hearing that and just express to people that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to let them see you cry.
Yeah. The other book I'd like to plug is The Gatekeepers by Chris Whipple, I believe is the author. It takes a look at the modern presidencies and specifically their chiefs of staff. A lot of presidents have several chiefs of staff. And so it was a fantastic book if you're studying leadership styles, just to see how different not only the presidents are, but the people that they select to lead their immediate team, those leadership styles and the things that the book covers, the significant things that are going on that they're dealing with, and how those different leadership styles were able to meet or not meet the challenge of the moment. So I highly recommend that book. I don't have a specific lesson. It was just an amazing book to see different styles of leadership and how they can or cannot work.
Yeah, this is definitely a book I got to check out. I think, with leaders, we think of the public-facing people, but you got to think about the person behind the person sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who would you say are your most important leadership role models, whether fictional or real? I know you mentioned Tina Fey, of course.
Yes, she was. That was in college. Early person that I looked up to. Now, I would say one of my biggest mentors is my former boss, Amy Soner, executive director of Bluegrass Green Source. She, over the years, has taught me a lot and been very open with me about her leadership and the journey that she has had as a leader. And I've learned so much from her, so definitely want to lift her up. My co-director, Nicole Agullian-Astrady, she, I learn so much from her every time we talk. It's really funny because earlier I mentioned I'm the oldest daughter, and I never wanted an older sibling. Never. I never regret my parents not giving me an older sibling. But I definitely feel like Nicole is an older sister to me in our relationship, and I would go to war for her. Just the way that she leads and the things that she has. I don't know. I just can't. I'm just a huge fan of Nicole.
Yeah.
Just a huge fan. So I'm honored to work with her as co-director at NLC. Kamala Harris, I would say, is one of the more famous, quote unquote, famous leaders that I look up to specifically. And I was on the Kamala train before she really ran for a big office back in the day. But specifically, no matter your politics, her leadership style, she takes on these heavy things, but she always has joy. She centers joy in her leadership. And I think that is huge. And given my personality, that's important to me. I like to have fun.
Yeah.
And things get serious and things get heavy, but you have to be able to, we're all human, and we have to lighten the mood a little bit. So I just really respected specifically Kamala's joy that she carries throughout all of her leadership roles. And then finally, I have to, of course, say Princess Leia. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was an early role model for me. And again, somebody who didn't wait for things to happen. Mm-hmm. Just, let's grab the blaster and go.
Yeah. She was probably, I think, if I can remember my childhood correct, probably the first, how do I say, like the first female leader I've ever looked up to. Like, I think it was around the age of 5, but I remember seeing Star Wars and being like, what a badass princess. Like, I didn't, I'm ashamed to say, like, I was a kid, but I'm like, I didn't know women could be like badasses like that. I wasn't taught that, but yeah, so I respect you saying that as a fellow Star Wars fan as well, but specifically a Princess Leia fan.
Yeah, she's the best.
Yeah. She kept the Rebel Alliance alive. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you mentioning Amy, too. I'm a fan of hers and the great work she does with Bluegrass Screen Source and the support she's given to WKY. And, of course, Nicole, it's funny that you mentioned her. I just called her for advice last week as well. And like you said, every time I talk to her, there's so much more I learn. And I even so much more I think about for myself, and I feel really empowered by what she says too, and really support it. So funny that you I just what you were saying, like I would go to war for her too, and I've known her not. Yeah, I don't talk with her nearly as much as you do, but yeah, she's someone who.
There's something about like that phrase specifically. I don't think I've ever said about another person that I know, and it's just something about her energy and the way that she carries herself. So Nicole, if you're listening, we love you, and I guess you've got a whole army here ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. You've got us, Nicole, and Princess Leia, you've got us too. We'll go to war for you too. That might be. So this year marks the 250th anniversary of Lexington, Kentucky's founding. With the work you're doing at CivicLex, and then with the great work you've done locally here. What are some leadership reflections you want to give on this great city and specifically our local leaders? Well,
I love Lexington for a variety of reasons. But in my experience, and something that I really love, one of the top things that I could say that I love about the city is the community that we have. I mentioned our work with the Diversity Festival. There are very few large cities, or this is a very large town, if you will. No, it's a city. Where you could do something like that, where a small group of people in our community could just come together and put something on that scale. So, quote unquote, easily, right? Like relatively easily. I just don't see I don't think a lot of people are able to do that in some of the larger communities. And especially with that being something that's so important. So that's one thing that I really love about our community. I love how diverse it is. I love how easy it is to just come together for a variety of things. And this is going to be nerd me talking. I love the system of our local government, the fact that it's nonpartisan. I love how, and this is me saying this personally, not professionally, but even before I started working at CivicLex, just noticing that in our local elections, if somebody starts throwing mud, the community does not respond well to that. They don't like that, and that's rare, I feel like. I can't speak to, I'm from Shelbyville, so it's smaller than Lexington, and I think you can sling a little bit more mud in Shelbyville than you can here. Yeah. So I just love that our community, has all of these things, and there's so much more, but just specific to my world, like those are the things that I see that I really love about Lexington.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is something I think even compared to other cities, other parts of Kentucky. I mean, back home in Eastern Kentucky, I love it there. I kind of have some fun with the mudslinging, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. I think it doesn't happen nearly as much in Lexington. And I think we've seen that, like even from our city councilors, the way they work together, the way the mayor and the vice mayor, everyone works together, like they just truly work together in a nonpartisan way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rare especially for a community this size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what specifically are you or will you be doing to celebrate the 250th anniversary?
Well, we Diversity Festival, we're trying to make it as the biggest one yet. It keeps growing every year, so we're really excited to do what we can to not only continue to grow, but just with it being the anniversary, the 250th anniversary, really leaning into that. I don't know what the programming is going to look like for that. If we're going to be able to incorporate that, I'm sure we are, but we've already started those conversations. So, yeah, I'm just excited to make that project bigger and better and celebrate our community through that avenue.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The biggest one yet. Looking forward to it this year. How does, the work you kind of talked about, especially with the Diversity Festival, you've talked about this, but how would you say the work you're doing puts Kentucky, Lexington in particular, but also Kentucky overall, on the global map? How does it show the world what Kentucky has to offer to them?
Well, I think, a lot of the work that I do, and we've talked about this on this podcast, I really just need people to, if you want to be a global leader or you want to do big things, enact change on the federal, global level, you have to start small. You will feel empowered as you achieve things at the local level, or in your community, just accomplishing these tasks here. And so just getting people to get engaged and focus on their community and focus on their state, and then after they are able to accomplish some things, they feel more empowered to expand that. I think that the things that I'm working on with CivicLex and new leaders are doing that. So my focus is just to, have people zoom in and focus on the things that they can change here, and then that will empower them to continue to grow and enact change across the world.
Yeah. And how could, I know you sort of briefly mentioned, but how can people, I'll ask first about CivicLex. If someone wants to get engaged with CivicLex or follow your newsletter, how can they do that?
Sure. CivicLex.org. If you go to our homepage, there should be a pop-up where you can sign up for the newsletter. I think signing up for the newsletter is a great way to just learn about us and also mainly learn about our community and our local government. And you can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook and I think LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I follow you all on all those platforms. But I know, the newsletter I get every week, it's great. It's like even just fun to read, and I mean the website has so much great information. I learned, it helped me learn a lot about Lexington when I moved here, so that's been great. And then if someone wants to get involved or follow New Leaders Council Kentucky or New Leaders Council, the national chapter, like how can they do that?
The national, so there's social media accounts for National New Leaders Council. I think that's just the handle on all of them. Facebook and Instagram, I think, are the biggest accounts for National New Leaders Council. Same goes for our chapter, New Leaders Council Kentucky. If you go to newleaderscouncil.org, all the chapters are listed. You can see our chapter's page on there, and get connected with us through the website. But social media is where our chapter puts a lot of the information out. So definitely follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. And then my last question for you, what advice do you have for leaders, whether, leaders of organizations, of movements, or just individuals leading, kind of anything, who hope to put Kentucky on the global map and, again, show Kentucky what the world has to offer, sort of like you said, how CivicLex New Leaders Council did that?
I think it's the same, what I said, just getting engaged in your community with the things that you care about and just rocking it out and doing the work and getting it done is going to put Kentucky on the map. Making big moves here will put Kentucky on the map.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Hopefully something more of us. I personally hope to do more of that myself, so I appreciate you sharing that. Well, Noel, thank you so much for taking the time for this interview. I appreciate you coming in, and I appreciate you, not just this, but being such a great mentor to me and to so many other people, and for highlighting the great things about our city and our Commonwealth. But thanks for taking the time for it. Thank
you so much, and thank you for all the work that you do and having this podcast. I think it's phenomenal. And anytime you need to chat, just let me know.
Oh yeah, is that an offer to me or to all our listeners?
Sure, all of the people.
Awesome. But yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That concludes my interview with Noel Osborn, a fellow civics nerd and member of the Rebel Alliance. As she mentioned, you can learn more about CivicLex by visiting CivicLex.org, and you can learn more about New Leaders Council by checking out newleaderscouncil.org. And if you're here in Lexington, make sure to stay updated on the local news to hear about this year's Diversity Festival, an event that Noel helped co-create years ago. My next episode, which will come out in March, features Ashley Smith, the Executive Director of Black Soil Kentucky. Remember to live local and think global, fellow changemakers.